But we're done with farts. We're done with the juvenile humor. If I edited out a lot of fart noises and there's only like one or two in that, consider yourself lucky. But we're done with that. We're done with that part. Now we're actually staying in the region because our next story actually takes place in Latin America, South America, things like that. So we don't even have to use any fuel on the Carpenter copter. We're just going to wait here for probably about 150, 200 years. We go into our cryogenic chambers and we sleep the restful sleep until it's the year 1962. Imagine you're a college student, which actually a lot of you are, but imagine you're a college student in 1962. And you're curious about the world, you're looking at different political beliefs and things like that. You kind of want to broaden your scope. I actually had a lot of run-ins with, who are those lunatics who follow Lyndon LaRouche? I got 100 stories about those. Actually, no, I have 4. I have 4 stories about dealing with Lyndon LaRouche people at my college. These guys are nuts. But anyways, again, you just kind of want to broaden your horizon. You want to look into different political beliefs. So a friend invites you to go to a seminar. He says there's this new political party. They broke off from the Trotskys. They are socialist to a degree that they see the future of humanity. And you're like, well, Trotsky's okay, but I'll go check it out. I'll go check it out just to see what they have. You go into a large auditorium. Not a lot of people in there, maybe like 30 or 40, but everyone in there, you can tell the energy level is high. They cannot wait to hear what their speaker is about to say. And to be honest, you get a bit of a cult feeling. Something seems off, but you put those feelings aside and say, you know what, I'm going to keep an open mind. A speaker comes to the stage, gets his papers ready, and begins speaking. We are preparing ourselves for a stage in which before the atomic war, we shall struggle for power. During the atomic war, we shall struggle for power. And we shall be in power. After destruction commences, the masses are going to emerge in all countries. In a short time, in a few hours. Capitalism cannot defend itself in an atomic war except by putting itself in caves and attempting to destroy all that it can. The masses, in contrast, are going to come out, will have to come out, because it is the only way to survive. The apparatus of capitalism, police, army, will not be able to resist. It'll be necessary to organize the workers' power immediately. Nuclear war equals revolutionary war. It'll damage humanity, but it will not. It cannot destroy the level of consciousness reached by it. Humanity will pass quickly through a nuclear war into a new human society. Socialism. That's not just a guy breathing heavily in your ear. The crowd goes wild at this speech. And you quickly say goodbye to your friend, and you sneak out of that auditorium, and you basically run home. What you've just heard is a speech from J. Posadas. J. Posadas is the founder of a belief known as Posadism. Now, this story was recommended to me on YouTube from Addie Nathan, and I appreciate it. Thank you for the recommendation. Posadism was a political group in the 1960s. It's still around today. And they were so nutty that Castro himself kicked them out of Cuba. After the Cuban Revolution, J. Posadas said, wait, why do the Americans still have Guantanamo Bay? And which I've always thought was weird too. I never knew Guantanamo Bay existed, and I mean, it was common knowledge, but I didn't know it existed until after 9/11. But the fact that we had all this problems with Russia and Cuba and all that stuff, but we had a military base on the island, I always thought was weird. But Posadas was basically saying Castro's not doing enough because there's still U.S. troops on the island, and Castro's like, listen, it's not worth it, da-da-da-da-da. And Posadas actually started to get groups of people from the cities to march on the base, and Castro's like, listen, no, like, this is the deal we have set up, and he kicked Posadas out of Cuba. He was too much of a revolutionary for Castro. He ends up going to South America and Latin America, and he starts all these little originally he was part of Trotsky groups, but he didn't feel they were going far enough. So he started forming this new political belief named after himself, called Posadism. His beliefs were that nuclear war was not only inevitable, but good. The Soviet Union and China should strike first. the only way to defeat capitalism is through a global thermonuclear war. Now, his followers thought that was great, but his followers were never given the chance to rebut him. All the meetings were, he would go to the town hall meetings, and if he wasn't there personally, all the meetings were a group of people sitting around listening to tape recordings of his speeches. His political newspapers were mostly transcripts of his political speeches. And people would just sit around and talk about what they learned. There was no leader but him. So it was basically a cult. A doomsday cult, really. He wanted nuclear war and had these visions of this nuclear war, and within hours of the nukes falling, all the workers would rise up and kill all the cops and stuff like that. Fairly short-sighted, because while that may happen in the short term, even if you win, the world is in the nuclear ruins. So he gained a lot of followers from that, but he lost a lot of connections in the political world. Other groups didn't want to deal with him because he was too nutty. That was only the beginning, and so you had groups already severing ties with this group, but in Latin America and South America, it was fairly popular. I mean, it's fairly popular compared to other offshoot communist socialist groups. He wasn't like top of the pops. Like, it wasn't this huge thing, but it had its good amount of membership. But anyway, so the nuclear thing they kept preaching, and they really do, they're not around as much today, but that's still part of their belief system, that nuclear war is revolutionary war. It is the final step. But around 1968, Posadas has another vision. He realizes that they actually have an ally that is an untapped resource. They actually have now looked around the globe and says, if we can get these people to take our side, we will win. There will be no defeating us. But they didn't really look around the world. They looked up. In 1968, J. Posadas wrote a pamphlet called Flying Saucers, The Process of Matter and Energy, Science, the Revolutionary and Working Class Struggle, and the Socialist Future of Mankind. It made 4 points. 1. UFOs are evidence of the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations. 2. Since advances in society come from advances in technology, extraterrestrials must come from a more advanced society than Earth, like socialism. He had this belief that the reason why science wasn't as advanced as it should be is because capitalism used science to kill, socialism would use science to heal. He envisioned this world where everyone could talk to any animal. People could reproduce like amoebas, asexually, but I just love to imagine a person splitting in two and then having 2 of them come around. He believed that women should give birth in space. He believed in this idea called Russian cosmism, that once we left the planet, we would be these immortal people with no worries. And he believed that the aliens had already reached this level, and the only way they could have reached this level is because they were already socialist. He believed the reason why aliens, this was point 3, the reason why aliens aren't interacting with us is because we are a primitive, i.e. capitalist society, and as long as we were a capitalist society, worldwide, there were obviously huge communist and socialist strongholds. But worldwide, you had this huge thing of capitalism in Europe and in Western Europe and America. As long as that were there, the aliens weren't going to interact with us because we were seen as primitive. So 4, and this was kind of the main point, Posadists had to contact the aliens to get them to align with the socialists and destroy capitalism on the planet. Now, what's funny is the nuclear war thing always struck a lot of other socialists as kind of weird, but they said, yeah, I get where you're coming from. Like, yes, if there was a huge nuclear war or a limited nuclear war or whatever, it would destroy capitalism because capitalism needs material goods to sell and buy. You need groups of people to buy and sell those items. You need labor to make the items to sell and to buy and all that stuff. So yes, you are right that if a nuclear war happened, it would impact capitalism more than it would impact communism or socialism. Yes, you're correct. However, it would involve the deaths of hundreds of millions of people and tons of land that wouldn't be able to be used. It would be a tragedy on a global scale, literally. It would be absolutely terrible. So yes, I see your point, but I don't think that's the path. I think we can do these other things. When he came out with this UFO thing, everybody laughed at him. To the point that, immediately they were classified as a UFO cult. They became a huge joke in political circles. Other socialists started referring to them not as Posadist or Fourth International. They just started calling the members extraterrestrials. Whenever they referred to this dude, Jay Posadas, or anyone in his group, they would call him, hey, look at the ETs over there. Completely destroyed their credibility. 100%. Posadas then realized that he had probably overstepped his bounds. He ended up getting exiled from South America at this point. He's in Europe now, where he eventually died in 1981. But they started talking less and less about weird. And the weird thing, too, is that when I was reading this article, they said, you would be reading the Fourth International Posadist newspaper, and it would have an article about like a worker strike in Britain. And then next to it, it would say, when man talks to dolphins, world will be better. It was like all intermixed with like real events and then this super fringe science stuff. But his followers still believed in it, but it rapidly started having drop off because people did not want to be connected with a UFO cult. They wanted to be socialists and they kind of believed this guy. But once they were basically getting mocked from their own side, you started to have membership drop off. To this day, they're remembered as a wacky UFO doomsday offshoot far, far left of socialism. And up until around 2011, they were still producing material. Their website's down now, but they stopped talking about UFOs. It was just completely damaged their brand. Nobody wanted to join. They were a big laughingstock, so they really backed away from that. But they still talked about, nuclear war is good. Because that, again, that idea is logically, it's stupid, but you can see the logic in it. What's interesting about this conspiracy theory? Like, you have a guy, he has a ton of members, he has all these groups around the world. He had some in Europe too, but it was mostly located in South America, Central America. You have all of this power, and he ends up making the mistake of talking about aliens in 1968 and becomes a big joke. And it's funny because nowadays you have cults, religious stuff will talk about UFOs. It's a little more accepted now. But in 1968, that was his big misstep. But the thing is, he broke off from the Trotsky groups to start this sect, to start this political belief system. It's just as likely that he could have kept those views hidden, not have argued, towed the party line, moved up through the ranks, get to the top or near the top, and begin to whisper those beliefs into somebody's ear. That's how you play the long game. You may be a weirdo in real life. You may have some bizarre political beliefs, but by starting your cult or your offshoot group, you're actually handicapping yourself. It's much more beneficial to these fringe beliefs to work their way up through the system legitimately. And some people do. And what happens is over the years and over the decades as they move up these groups, their own fringe theories start to get dulled and they start to become a little more mainstream, a little more palatable. You get older, you have more experience, you're talking to people with different ideas. And you go, maybe the nuclear war thing's not a great idea. But to a hardcore believer, you're holding on to those beliefs the whole time you're working your way up that ladder. How many people are out there who believe the only way to win their ideological war is through nuclear war? You could have someone out there who believes that the path to the future means the nuking of a religious city, that the path to a glorious new future is biological weapon use across vast continents. You may have people out there like Posadas who believe that only a full-blown nuclear war can lead to the perfect world for the humans that are left. Jay Posadas died in 1981, but people with that type of mentality still live. And how many of them do you think are whispering in a general's ear on a daily basis? How many of them are generals themselves? How many of them are just waiting for the day to make their dream our reality? That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.